Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? This is Finite MTG, and today I am bringing you yet another Chaos Draft. Normally I record these in real time, but this one I was actually feeling kind of sick during the draft portion and actually the gameplay. So I was not going to be streaming or recording this one in real time, but then as it happens sometimes, this one just ended up being a little bit too sweet for me not to turn into a video and share with all of you guys. So we are going back over it. And with that out of the way, let's dive right into pack one, pick one here. So we have this pack of Champions of Kamigawa, and the original Kamigawa block is maybe somewhat notorious for being a little underpowered, but this is a surprisingly good pack of Champions of Kamigawa. The card that stands out as the most powerful to me is this Honden of Seeing Winds. Realistically, you're never going to control a second shrine, but even just spending 4 and a blue to draw one additional card each turn, not to mention the card that's enabling you to do that is an enchantment, which is, particularly difficult to interact with. In my book, this is definitely first pick material in a Chaos draft. We're taking it over something like Rend Flesh, which is a really nice removal for Chaos. Something like Mothrider Samurai is totally solid, though Teller of Tales as a 5-mana 3/3 flyer might be a bit better. Something like Pain Kami is also not bad, and then Hanabi Blast is, I think, decent as well. But yeah, pretty happy to start things off with a Honden. This is not only first pick material, but I think a really strong card, and we're actually actively looking to splash it if blue is not open as a main color. All right, now second pick, we have, I guess, this pack of Judgment, and it's quite a bit weaker. There's not really anything in blue. There's a card that used to be a pretty formidable threat in the Urnam and I've never really played with Urnam, but I was just looking at this and thinking about it. The conclusion I arrived at was, Thornhide Wolves, 5 mana for a 4/5 vanilla, is a totally solid card in Chaos, but it costs just 1 more mana and doesn't have a huge drawback of effectively giving one of your opponent's things unblockable. So even though I do believe once upon a time this thing was super strong, maybe back in Constructed back in the day, whatever, I actually don't find it that exciting here because creatures have gotten so much better over time, and because I do think the drawback is a fairly serious one. So actually the card that struck me as, what seemed to be the strongest in the pack is this Benevolent Bodyguard. Not terribly excited about a 1-mana 1/1, but I am excited about having this kind of threat of activation, for 0 mana that you can do at any time. Oh, you're going to kill a creature I care about? Well, I can just save that. It's also very cheap and efficient to do that, in contrast to something like Ember Shot, which is a totally solid effect, right? Lightning Bolt that cantrips, but 7 total mana is a tough sell for that one. So second pick here, we're taking the Bodyguard. All right, and then pack 1, pick 3. We've got some other interesting options. So we have this Retributive Wand here, and most likely you're not going to find a way to cash it in for that second ability, so it's just going to be pinging things for 3 mana. I forget, there's another effect that does this, whose name I should remember, and the costs are slightly different, but hopefully you guys will be able to help me out in the comments. But I do think this can be really good in Chaos where, the games are like grinding to a halt and everything's super slow. There's a chance it was even the better pick here, but I decided I wanted to go with something that is a little bit more efficient. When you're only a few packs into the Chaos draft, it's kind of hard to gauge the power level of it. And if you're in a super slow, super grindy Chaos draft where most, if not all of the packs are old, then yes, you're going to have time for something like this. But if you don't have as much time, then actually something like Mask of Immolation might be a lot more efficient and just kind of play by the sensibilities of modern day Magic. So 2 mana for a 1/1 token that comes auto-equipped to the mask, and you can sack it. So pretty similar to Mortar Pod if you guys are familiar with that card. Not bad when it comes to killing X1s or sometimes burning the opponent out. And pack 1, pick 4, I have this heuristic with Masters packs, and this is, I think, a pack of like Modern Masters or something like that. Modern Masters 2017 maybe. And my heuristic is not as interested in trying to take lands from a Masters pack, given that the spells are usually quite powerful. That said, the spell that stands out to me as the most powerful is going to be like Agony Warp, and so far that's looking pretty difficult for me to do. On the other hand, something I am more interested in than usual is trying to find a way to splash my first pick, that Hondon. And I already have a blue card, obviously, the Hondon, and then I have a white card in the Bodyguard. So I'm actually somewhat interested in this Seaside Citadel, thinking, there's no guarantee that blue is going to be a main color of mine. If I end up, let's say, white X and then splashing blue, then the Citadel is going to enable that. Same if I end up green, actually, because it's a tri-land. So I actually deviate from one of my heuristics here and make an unusually high pick of a land from a Master's Pack with the Seaside Citadel. All right, and you guys might have mentioned, or you might have remembered that just a minute ago I mentioned that the equipment, the Mask of Immolation, is similar to Mortar Pod. Well, that was actually a bit of foreshadowing because we do pick up the Mortar Pod proper here. And now we're in a really interesting spot because, already we are going to be pretty good at using small like creature tokens or things that like to be sacrificed. In other words, maybe kind of incentivized to be pairing what we have with black because black is going to be pretty good at throwing things away. Um, but we have a higher capacity in general for synergy than you often would, especially at the start of a chaos draft. So Mortar Pod is a pretty exciting one here for me, and let's see if we can find something cool to do with it. Also notable, by the way, I mentioned that we would like to pair these effects with black. If you find just a random like Sanitarium Skeleton or whatever that you can throw away multiple times. But we are also notably passing some good black cards. So here, there was a Spread the Sickness. We just passed an Agony Warp, another good black card, and we actually have no good black cards. So that might continue to be relevant here. And spoiler alert, it actually is going to continue to be relevant. In my opinion, the best card in this pack, the Rivals of Ixalan pack here, is going to be this Mausoleum Harpy. Most of the time, 5-mana 3/3 flyer is just a totally solid card in Chaos, and then the upside is somewhat marginal, but it does come up. You have to jump through a couple hoops in order to get there. You have to get the City's Blessing, and then something else of yours does have to die. But if you can wind up in a spot where you have, a 3/3 flyer that's growing, then that's actually quite a nice one. But just because I'm already passing some good black cards and we have cards in, plenty of other colors already, here I actually decided I wanted to go with the Snubhorn Sentry. My idea behind this is I'm thinking that I might be some kind of weird Jeskai deck, something I've done many times before in Chaos. And specifically, this is pretty good with Mask of Immolation and Mortar Pod, because each of those cards provides 2 permanents to try to get you toward the City's Blessing. And then we can also still be, a nice red-white deck that's able to leverage those 2 sack effects. For instance, if we get like a Raise the Alarm or something like that, that's also going to be, quite nice with like a Mortar Pod. And then on top of all those things, we do have the Seaside Citadel, which is going to kind of incentivize me to try to be, some color combination that would benefit from the Citadel. All right, here, and then pack 1, pick 7. This is surprising. So, we noted the first time around that there were a number of decent options for us in this pack of Champions of Kamigawa. Something that you wouldn't expect but did somehow happen is we actually wheeled one of them. That's the Hanabi Blast. So Hanabi Blast is a weird one in the sense that randomness does play a part in it, but you are also able to mitigate the randomness somewhat. If you, for instance, are able to hold excess lands in your hand, you can make it more likely that you're able to actually keep the Hanabi Blast, and then it's kind of a shock with buyback at that point, and just, you can throw away the excess lands that you don't care about. Obviously, it's not going to work out that way every time because it is random, but a totally solid effect from Chaos in a pack where there's really not too much else to offer. So that's a nice one, and that's going to, start me on this path of solidifying into red. And speaking of that, there's not really anything to write home about from the pack of Judgment on the wheel, but I am going to go ahead and pick up this Barbarian Bully, which does has some text that can matter sometimes. It's a fairly weak card, as Punisher cards tend to be. It's never particularly good to give your opponent agency, but sometimes this thing can be like a gray ogre with a marginal upside. So it's not the literal worst. All right, and then pack one, pick nine. Again, maybe some more foreshadowing there, as I mentioned the Sanitarium skeleton, as I would love to pick this thing up and be able to sack it to the mortar pods, but at this point, I've pretty much locked myself out of black. It's going to be really, really difficult for me to play black from here. I've already passed some premium removals and a nice flyer. Speaking of nice flyers, this Dagger Sail Aeronaut is not the best. But as far as flyers go, and especially in red, I mean, 4 mana, 3/2 flying on your turn, totally solid effect. I do actually think this is the best card in the pack, so this will solidify me into red much more than the Barbarian Bully. And now, here we go, we're starting to pick up a bit more synergy. We have the Mask of Immolation, we have the Mortar Pod. How about a nice Mud Button Torch Runner? 3 mana, 1/1, so not starting off too strong. But then when it dies, you get to Lightning Bolt something. And what about being able to have this thing die on command? And then on top of that, you have another damage that you can point wherever you want, right? Damage from the mask or damage from the mortar pod, assuming we're able to equip those to this. So actually quite excited about the Torch Runner here. It feels like we're doing something sweet, which you don't always get to do in Chaos, but every now and then you really do. And now pack 1, pick 11. There's really nothing for me here. I want to say I took like Septic Rats. This one doesn't really matter though. This one, on the other hand, does. Pack 1, pick 12. We have this pack of Rivals Vixalon on the wheel. And, I think Oathsworn Vampire and Aggressive Urge are both better cards than the Sun-Collared Raptor. But at this point, I'm just trying to take cards that are on color, try to signal to the rest of the table, hey, I don't know exactly what I'm doing yet, but I know for sure I'm playing red. I know for sure I'm, at a minimum, splashing blue. So please stay out of my colors. And same idea here. I think I'm just taking this Kami of Fire's Roar, even though 4 mana for a 2/3 with text that doesn't really matter is clearly pretty bad. And here, I guess I'm taking Cabal Trainee over Folk Medicine. These cards are basically unplayable, and there's a land. All right, now pack 2, pick 1. So you might recall that the Seaside Citadel is not just a land that produces blue and white if I do end up being a weird Jeskai deck, but it does also produce green. And for my money, the best card far and away in this pack is going to be Abundance. Abundance is a sweet one. It doesn't straight up provide you card advantage, but it does provide you card selection. So once you get to a point, and it does happen basically in almost every game of Chaos Draft, where you don't want to draw lands anymore, Abundance basically says, well, that's not a problem. You can just choose to draw spells. So I think Abundance is super powerful, and even though I don't believe I have any green cards yet, I do think it's worth speculating on. And, the opportunity cost is super low. I'm not really passing anything here. So now we are looking at a possible, Gruul deck splashing this Honden. We have a pack here of Secrets of Strixhaven. So, at the time, I believe this was the newest Magic set, so kind of expecting something super powerful here, and look through, and there's nothing in a higher rarity or anything like that that looks terribly exciting to me, but there is a totally solid card for me in the Tome Blast. We already have sort of Shock with buyback in the Hanabi Blast, but we are really blasting it up here, and as we're effectively taking Firebolt, right? Just costs an extra mana the first time around, but totally solid pickup, even if it's not quite as exciting as what I'd hoped for from this pack. All right, and now there's a pack here, I guess, of Fate Reforged, and there's just about nothing interesting or exciting for us. Continuing to see nothing in blue. That's been true for a really long time in this draft, by the way, so I have to imagine that blue is basically just off the table. We haven't really seen anything in white either, but we do have the Abundance, right? We have the Abundance in green, which is that nice rare that we speculated on, and now best card in this pack, I think, is Hunt the Weak. So even though I didn't really anticipate that I'd be moving into green, we are going to take this Hunt the Weak because, well, it's the best card, and taking the best card in Chaos Draft is often just a totally reasonable game plan. All right, and now pack three, or sorry, I tried to say pack three, pick two, but obviously that is incorrect because we're partway through pack two. Um, so we're here looking at this pack of Rise of the Eldrazi, and I think the best card in this pack, well, I guess the card with the highest ceiling is going to be the Totem Guide Heartbeast, but this is also pretty difficult to make work. That said, I do still think white is on the table. I'm really not convinced that I'm going to be playing green. Note that there's really nothing noteworthy in green in this pack. So here I'm just going to take the McKindy Griffin. 4 mana for a 2/4 flyer is a totally solid card for Chaos. Even though white does feel like it's dried up somewhat, I'm not ready to say it's just off the menu entirely. So we'll take the McKindy Griffin from this pack. We'll see. We're looking to either pair our red with white or with green. We'll see what ends up happening. All right, and then this is a weird one. We have this pack of ninth edition, and almost all these cards are pretty terrible. There's like Death Gazer that's, somewhat grudgingly playable, and Dehydration that's like really grudgingly playable in my opinion. But then you have Sift, which is just actually a good card. And this is confusing because not only is it easily the best card in the pack, but we started things off with a blue card in the Honden, and then we proceeded to really not see any blue all the way here until, this is midway through pack two. So now we're going to be taking this Sift. The plan was already to likely splash the Honden, so we can splash the Sift as well. Gives us the card advantage up front, unlike the Honden, which is going to force us to wait around a little bit. So not upset about picking up the Sift, mostly just confused. And now here, I guess we have a pack of Guild Pact here, and this is actually a really nice one because at this point we have decided we, are certainly playing these blue cards. We're certainly playing the Honden, certainly playing the Sift, even if they're just both going to be on the splash. Want to pick up more fixing for them if possible, and there is an Is It Signet. I, in general, am not a huge fan of Signets, but I do think this is a good spot for them. On the other hand, if we weren't splashing, or if we knew for sure we were in green rather than white, potentially, then we could take this Streetbreaker Worm. But I don't really see an argument for that over the Is It Signet, which is kind of guaranteed to help our mana. So we're locked into red as a main color and locked into blue as, at minimum a splash. All right, and then pack of 10th edition, going to be pretty weak here. Unfortunately, I think the best card in the pack is an Anaba Bodyguard. At least it's on color for us, but really an unexciting one. We might be in rough shape on playables, especially given the fact that we don't really know our secondary color for sure. And here, the Secrets of Strixhaven pack comes around, and, if I'm excited about an Is It Signet, I guess there would be a lot of cognitive dissonance if I wasn't also excited about a Spectacle Summit. So I'm going to take the blue-red dual Surveil land here, really not passing too much anyway. I mean, most of the cards here are Golgari or Witherbloom, I guess. I'm not really looking to do anything with that. All right, pack of Fate Reforged on the wheel, unfortunately, is really terrible. I'm thinking I probably should have taken, like, Return to the Earth here. I have a feeling I took Breakthrough the Line. Return to the Earth at least is playable out of the sideboard if I'm in green, so I'm not really sure why I took this, but I believe I did. And here, so this is where everything changed. So we had a totally kind of typical draft from me, except for the fact that, I wasn't recording it. And, probably 9 times out of 10 in this spot, I just take Lagak Lizard, which is a Hill Giant, and Hill Giant is totally solid in most Chaos drafts, and don't, think twice about it. But there was a secret plan that I had when I took the McKindy Griffin from this pack the first time around, and that plan was to see if I could wheel this Skittering Invasion. Because, let's face it, this card is not good, right? 7 mana to make 5 0/1s. That's not a good deal no matter how you slice it. But I did kind of bank on the fact that everyone else would be thinking of it the same way. And unlike everyone else, I effectively have 2 Mortar Pods in my deck. So it's very expensive and it's very ambitious, but I can technically pay 7 mana to put 5 0/1s out, and then if I have one of my Mortar Pods, now I can spend an additional 10 mana over the course of however many turns, and turn my 5/01s into 5 damage divided as you choose, which I guess is a bit similar to the card Boulder Fall, which is like, 5 damage divided as you choose for like 8 mana or something like that. Anyway, so I've managed to do something really sweet, even if it's very, very janky and very weak. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But I thought it was really sweet. So at this point in the draft, not only did I take the Skittering Invasion, but I took a picture of this and the two Mortar Pods and Mud Button Torch Runner, sent them to my friend Monsieur Verdoux. And Verdoux wasn't in this draft, and I think he maybe replied something like, "Oh, he was so jealous" or something like that. And one thing leads to another. Next thing I know, I'm on a Discord call with Verdoux as I'm progressing through this Chaos draft. That's going to change some things drastically. And I haven't had Verdoux kind of co-pilot my ship very many times before, but let's just say I'm very glad he was there. All right, and then next up here, took a Goblin Chariot. This pack doesn't really matter. Here, I think I took Shattering Spree for the sideboard. I don't remember, but again, not super relevant. I might have taken the Burning Tree Bloodscale in case I ended up in Gruul. This one is just completely unplayable. I don't remember what I took, and it doesn't matter. Graduation Day, I guess technically somebody could do something with this, but it's so much easier to do it in Strixhaven Limited than in Chaos. And this is actually quite relevant for us. Jeskai Runemark that we're getting last pick, I think, from the pack of Fate Reforged. All right, and now here we have a pack of Conflux, and unfortunately, at this point, we haven't really seen that many reasons to be in white or reasons to be in green, and I'm showing Verdoux what we have. And I'm sure I mentioned something about like Avon Squire because this is a card I like, and we do have some white cards, and I don't mind being aggressive. You guys have seen that from me probably many times before. Could just be some kind of red-white deck with a blue splash. But Verdoux's talking to me about the blue cards and how, we don't really have anything very enticing in the other colors, and I see what he's getting at, so we're going to just pick up this Frontline Sage, which, yeah, I mean, the card is a nice one. I do think it's actually better than Avon Squire, so even though it is going to tax the mana a little bit if we end up deeper on splashing blue, we're going to take it. But actually, Verdoux has it in mind to just end up playing blue as a secondary color, even though we've seen so little of it. And if that happens, I'll just say we would be in extremely rough shape on playables. All right, and now we have a pack of Darksteel. A couple of the cards I like in the pack would be like Loxodon Mystic, which is a tapper, pretty cost inefficient one, but a tapper nonetheless. This Emissary of Hope is decent, 3 mana, 2/1 flying. I actually like Darksteel Pendant quite a bit, but for us, it's going to be the Spire Golem. Verdoux is really encouraging me to go into blue as my secondary color, even though that would mean throwing away a lot of the playable cards that we'd taken in other colors. So, who am I to say no to the master? So we have to take the Spire Golem, and let's see where this wild ride takes us next. Okay, now we have a pack of Avatar, and this is a weird one. There's nothing terribly exciting for us in red or in blue, but we do have still the Seaside Citadel, and we have some pieces of blue-red fixing. And this Iroh looks like it could do something really powerful. Strong teamer card. We do have Hunt the Weak as another potential green splash, and we figure, what the hell, like, might as well take something that at least looks like it could do something really strong. Maybe we'll get some nice cards to flash back, but I'll just remind you guys that it does get a little bit awkward with some of the spells that we already have, like Tome Blast, that already has flashback. It really doesn't need flashback from Iroh. And something like Hanabi Blast is just take my word for it, it's going to be clunky. But anyway, we're taking the Iroh here. All right, and then I don't really like any of the cards from this pack except for Vengeful Vampire, which, again, we've been locked out of black for a while. If I was in white, I could take this Elgod Inquisitor. This thing would actually be totally solid, I think, for us. There's Erdwall Ripper, which doesn't look very exciting, but I guess it's playable. But Verdoux talks me into the Wolf Hunter's Quiver. He's always looking to ping things. I don't really like this one that much, just because it's so cost inefficient. But hey, he told me to take it. We're taking it, I guess. All right, and then now a pack of Guilds of Ravnica. This one is quite weak for us, but I've already demonstrated a proclivity toward fixing in this draft, so why not just take this Steam Fence and move along? Now my mana fixing for blue and red is great, even if I don't really have too many sources that enable a green splash. At least my blue and red mana should be there pretty consistently for me. Then here's a weird one as well. There's like this possibility that I could take Trap Essence as another teamer card if I do, in fact, end up splashing green. But it's just kind of a clunky one. And, I'm not sure how likely I am to even have a creature in play when I'm countering something, so I might miss out on my +1/+1 counter value. So we end up going with Weave Fate here. This one is a lot better with Iroh, just in terms of being able to flash it back, because I think Iroh only enables flashback on your turn. And Weave Fate is it's decent, classic inspiration effect. All right, so earlier I passed my Hill Giant of choice, my Lagak Lizard, and now I get one for free anyway, the Canyon Minotaur. One of the differences between Verdoux and me is like Verdoux kind of doesn't, he's not as concerned about making playables as I am. For me, that's a big concern, and that really colors the way I draft quite a bit. And that's one of the reasons I was really reluctant to just give up the white and give up the green as potential secondary colors and just move into blue. Another difference is I really like solidly statted creatures, and it doesn't really matter to me how unexciting they appear to be. So I actually quite like Hill Giant. It's not an amazing card by any stretch, but where Verdoux is like, oh, Hill Giant, like he's pretty disappointed if he has to put this into his deck. For me, it's like, oh, that's just a solid card. And next up here, there's really nothing for us, so we're going to take Unforge for the sideboard. This was a pretty big one here on the wheel. So we have this Avatar pack. We're already pretty good at drawing cards, so we don't really need this Waterbending Scroll. Not sure what the island count was going to look like anyway. I'm somewhat interested in this Iroh as kind of an Alpine Grizzly, but Verdoux is not having it. He wants me to take Deserter's Disciple, and I agree that this card has, a higher ceiling than the Iroh, and I am not opposed to taking it, but let's just say I was not prepared for how much work the Disciple is going to do for us. And a bit more foreshadowing, I guess, with that. Here's the Erdwall Ripper. This thing, I've never seen this card be as good as it was for us in this draft. Yeah. And here, I think I took this Locksmith. I really don't like Goblin Piker, but if I have to put it in my deck, then I will do it. And here we actually do get this Trap Essence back on the wheel from the pack of cons, and we're going to need it. We're going to need every playable looking card we get. Here, I guess I took a Knotvine Mystic. Here, probably a Quicksilver Behemoth, and I guess that was it. Maybe it was like the Strixhaven pack next with, fewer cards in the pack. All right, so let's look at the build of the deck. We didn't actually have this Jeskai Runemark in there at first. That was a mistake. We just sort of assumed it was an unplayable aura, but man, this deck was so janky. It's extremely unusual for me to make some kind of pivot like that, basically in pack 3, in terms of figuring out, what my secondary color is. And then for green to be on the splash of all things, just did not have that on my bingo card with this draft. But we have Iroh, Hunt the Weak, Trap Essence on the splash. We do have the Skittering Invasion in the main deck, though. Again, some more spoilers. We did end up boarding that out several times. Most of our blue is just card draw, right? We have a Looter, draw spell, another draw spell, our Honden here. And then the red is sort of the meat of the deck. That's where we have our creatures, our burn spells, one of our mortar pods is red, all that. We do have some very nice fixing. Despite having a bunch of expensive cards and not very many playables, like a lot of the time in this exact situation, you want to play 18 lands because the curve is high and, you're in 3 colors, you don't really have a ton of playables, but we actually can't really justify 18 lands because our fixing is so good and we already have a Signet. So sort of forced to play 17. Not normally something you complain about, but in this spot, let's just say an 18th land, wouldn't have been so bad if we just had one more playable spell. All right, now jumping into game one of round one. This commentary is going to go a lot faster because the replay speed is somewhat relentless. I don't remember everything, so I'm just going to be trying to keep up. Guess we lead on island. Technically, I could play a turn 3 Spire Golem if I find one more island and play island, but realistically here I'm always going to be playing, mountain, and then I thought I was going to be playing mask, but I drew the disciple, and now all of a sudden we're actually beating down, which is kind of wild. Not really something we expected to be doing in this deck, and we continue to just beat down here. I could have gone for the Mask of Immolation to kill the Hungry Spriggan, but I want to be more mana efficient than that, so I'm going to play the Spire Golem. Opponent's already down to 11, by the way. Hungry Spriggan is a pretty nice, aggressive one, and we do get somewhat punished here by the post-combat Savage Punch taking out the Erdwall Ripper. Now we're just going to drop our Canyon Minotaur into play. Still just taking a bunch of damage. We're not too concerned about our life total. Opponent has the Hill Giant that we passed. Hill Giants are going to trade off. We made this attack with the Deserter's Disciple, thinking, maybe they block with the Hill Giant there. Oh, whoops, actually, I should slow down here a little bit. So we made the attack with the Deserter's Disciple, thinking, if the opponent blocks with the Lagak Lizard, then we're just going to play the Mask post-combat and then ping their Hill Giant. Either that, or maybe we're just basically killing them because they've already taken so much damage. But we are able to use the Mask to take out the Hungry Spriggan just to protect our life total. And then I think we re-equipped the Mask to the Disciple, and the opponent went for Aggressive Urge on the Disciple, which most of the time you're just going to let that resolve, let the opponent draw a card, see if they can find it out, whatever. But in this spot where it's like, the opponent's dead to rights, right? Like, we have this Hanabi Blast, we have the Mask that's going to be killing them really easily. All we have to do is just kind of make sure that they don't find some kind of weird life gain card or something like that. So here we're just going to deny them the draw by sacking the Disciple, pinging their face, and that will be game one. And if it wasn't apparent from that, we are going to be drawing super hot in this one. I don't really know how, but that is what happened. Opponent's on 43 cards, by the way. I didn't notice that, I don't think, at the time. And here, turn 1, we've got a tapped Steam Vents. Turn 2, we have a choice between Izzet Signet and Mortar Pod. I think, we're just going to play the Izzet Signet. Opponent does play an awkward one for us. The Goblin Archaeologist, which has a 50% chance of blowing up our artifacts and a 50% chance of just killing itself. So at some point, ideally we're able to take this thing out with like a Hanabi Blast, because otherwise our deck actually does care a decent amount about artifacts. Don't care that much about losing the Izzet Signet. That was one of the reasons we played it out there. But we do kind of need our Mortar Pods. It's a big part of our game plan. Speaking of Mortar Pods, I think here, I don't actually remember what we did in terms of either Mortar Podding to protect our life total. Looks like we're not going to do that. So I guess we went with Frontline Sage to be mana efficient. Opponent's going to play their own 3 mana Shock in the Dark Temper. And now we're just going to Hanabi Blast the Archaeologist. So one of the nice things about that play, after we've drawn the Mask of Immolation, is, even if we discard like the Mask, we still have the Mortar Pod, and vice versa. Obviously, I'd prefer not to discard the Hanabi Blast itself, but discarding land is actually perfect there, and we're able to take out both their creatures and still have both of our Mortar Pods and the Hanabi Blast and the Trap Essence. So that's kind of the ideal scenario from us. Now the opponent plays a Hill Giant, which we don't have a clear way to answer. We can't equip the Mortar Pod to the Mask token if we also want to hold up the Trap Essence, which we absolutely do. Basically countering anything here, even though that one would have just died to the Hanabi Blast, so that might have actually been a mistake. But at this point, we're not really aware of that. And I think I'm just passing, because I've now created a 3-4, and the 3-4 is going to be able to block. And I have the read here that the opponent has Aggressive Urge when they go for this attack, which is unfortunate. And we do get to deny them the card draw, at least by we're going to Hanabi Blast plus ping the thing in response, because our guy was going to die anyway. So might as well respond, and that's the second Aggressive Urge that we've fizzled. Unfortunately, this time we do pitch the Hanabi Blast, but we draw this Iroh. And that is enormous for us. I mean, it's 5/5, but it's also like one of our few truly relevant cards. And then we continue to draw perfectly. This time it's the Honden off the top. Gonna go ahead and equip the Mortar Pod to Iroh. That gives him an extra toughness. We are never blocking here against the Death Toucher, even though our life total is kind of in peril. And opponent has a really large one here in the Tenured Concoctor. We're gonna go ahead and make this attack. And now we get to play and equip the Torch Runner. We're going to block Sack here to kill the Death Toucher, take no damage from the Concoctor. Seems like a fine exchange. By the way, we are able to flashback the Hanabi Blast, but we are still, I think, going to have to discard. And then the other thing, too, if I remember how this works, I'm not 100% on this, but I believe the return this to its owner's hand thing doesn't actually work because I think the way flashback works, it basically prevents the spell from like going back to your hand or anything like that. So we ideally would be hellbent if we're casting this. But anyway, so now we've drawn Erdwall Ripper. We have this Inaba Bodyguard. We're in really rough shape here because the opponent has just some enormous chonkers. 4/5 Vigilance that doesn't like to be targeted, 6/4 Vanilla, and now 4/4 with the Power of Threshold. We just have to double block 2-for-1 ourselves to get the Streetbreaker Worm off the board. 2-for-1ing ourselves in general is not the biggest issue when you're drawing like an extra card each turn. But the issue that we have here is a lot of the cards in our deck don't really do anything at this point. Most of them are just like draw spells. Like for instance, there is that Sift. And I believe I can now flashback the Sift with the Iroh. But keep an eye on our cards and library here because that is going to be diminishing quickly. And here we try to figure out like, you know, what we could possibly play around from the opponent. Like when they make this big attack with both their dudes and we're at 9, there's sort of the question of like, can we afford to not block with the Iroh? Like, what is the situation there? Like, can we afford to take the damage and go really low? We thought about this for a long time, and this was the block that we decided on. And it's not going to work out great for us. So the good news, if you could even call it that, is that the Iroh does still trade with the Bark Ripper, but then we just have to throw away the Locksmith targeting the opponent's face. We don't take any damage this turn, and the Trumpet Blast is gone from their hand, but you know, we are, again, in pretty rough shape. So now we have Spire Golem. This is a huge draw because we get to Spire Golem and put the Mortar Pot on it. This gives it an extra toughness. Now we're able to just bounce off the Concoctor. But now it's getting really tricky because we're down to 10 cards in deck. Opponent's still at 13 life, so it's not like it's very clear cut how we're going to kill them. And our spells no longer have flashback because Iroh is dead. We have this land that can filter our draws, but it's actually much worse than like the Campus or the Scry land would be, because surveilling here means we're getting closer to decking. The additional draw on the Honden is mandatory, so we have not very many turns to try to figure out how to close out this game. And now the opponent continues to play Chonkers, and here's the Boulder off the top from them. And I think that looked like it was, yeah, Canyon Minotaur when we surveilled. There's no... Most of the cards that I would see on top there, even potentially a land, I might still have just capped off the Surveil. If nothing else, it kind of just gives me more information before going into my turn. And then here we're trying to figure out what the block is going to look like on the Concoctor and the Boulder. And it's interesting because for the most part, it seems like the Boulder is the scarier threat because this is the one that can snowball and continue to make guys and, you know, pressure me. But we actually decide here that we just want to try to take out this Concoctor. This thing has just been like a nuisance for us. It has higher toughness, so trying to multi-block it now while we still can is like not a bad idea. And I do believe that this multi-block is going to work out, thankfully. And again, I think we're just going to surveil and probably leave whatever card we see on top. Looks like, yeah. So this time we draw Barbarian Bully, and Barbarian Bully is actually doing a lot of work for us. So at this point, we're feeling good enough that we just get to rip it in there with the Spire Golem. Mostly, maybe not good enough in terms of like our life total that we're doing this, but again, look at the spot we're in. We now have 6 cards left in our deck, and it's diminishing quickly. Opponent's still at 13. But the plan here is we have Barbarian Bully plus Deserter's Disciple. And remember, we do have these mortar pods, so we can throw away our creatures to deal damage to the opponent. So this thing says discard a card at random, gets +2/+2 until end of turn, unless a player has a deal 4 damage to them. So what we can do on our turn is we can Deserter's Disciple, give this thing unblockable. Then we discard a card, and then at that point, the opponent definitely should not take 4 damage, but they will give it unblockable. Then it'll be, or sorry, they will give it +2/+2. It's already unblockable at that point. So then basically we're threatening 4 unblockable damage here. Oh, actually, I forgot about this as well. So then post-combat, we're able to re-equip the Mortar Pod to the Barbarian Bully and put the opponent into a similar spot, where now if they go ahead and attack with the Boulder, we can activate the Bully on their turn saying, hey, do you want to give me a 4/5? If you do, the 4/5 is just going to eat your Boulder. If you don't, you're going to take 4 damage, which is, again, kind of a lot. So it's pretty rare that the Punisher cards actually work out for you, and it's not like Barbarian Bully is a very good one, but it is kind of doing what we need it to do here. So the opponent does, in fact, go ahead and take the damage. We'll do the same. Once again, going to kind of needlessly surveil just to see what's coming up. Looks like it's a Sun-Collared Raptor. And now we go for this. We don't even cast the Hunt the Weak, because at this point, Verdoux has just told me that we have lethal, and without even calculating it, I'm just going to assume that he's right. And sure enough, we're coming in here for 6 evasive damage. Opponent's at 7 life. We have 2 mortar pods in play. You guys do the math. And somehow, on the brink of decking, we've come back and won this game. So some pretty insane stuff, given how janky our deck is. All right, now for round number 2. And this hand is totally fine. We've got our natural Tron. We've got one of our mortar pods. Got some card draw spells, which this deck very badly needs, because, I mean, we just kind of demonstrated that we can basically go through our entire deck and still not necessarily have enough gas to win. We not only have to draw the right cards for this deck to have a chance, but we also have to draw them in the right order. So the opponent here just has a wary Okapi. I'm going to go ahead and be mana efficient, just play the Sift, pitch a Mountain. We'll get the Signet down most likely next turn, but could also be the turn after that. We'll see. We're going to go ahead and take damage from the Okapi. Not too much I can do about that. And the opponent plays Wing Splicer, which is super good. That said, we can ping the Wing Splicer to remove flying from the token. We're going to go ahead and play Signet into our Hill Giant here. Main phase, pinging the Wing Splicer. We sort of went back and forth on this, which is why we did it post-combat. But the idea was, if the opponent has like a bounce spell on the Wing Splicer, when we go for the ping on their turn, then that's a nightmare for us. So we tried to go for the block with the Minotaur, but the opponent had this Praise Vengeance, which is kind of rough for us. They have this Hell Vault, and I should pause for a second to just tell you guys about the Hell Vault. So it's turn 6, the opponent only has 4 lands in play, so they did miss a land drop, but if they do ever get to 7 mana, I think we literally cannot beat that. I don't think we have any outs to Hell Vault, at least not in the main deck. And 7 mana exile target creature you control. Against this deck, where we barely have enough to cross the finish line when we see all of our cards, I mean, there's no way we're beating this. So, yeah, anyway, the race is on to try to kill the opponent before they get to 7 mana. But here, the opponent recast their Praise Vengeance with Rebound. They'll target the Golem. That means that we're going to put the Torch Runner on this, and we'll bolt the Okapi. When the damage is dealt, we're going to cast a Weave Fate here at end of turn as well. And the opponent has Blight Widow, and the Blight Widow is really, really funny. So note that, the opponent has this Hell Vault, right? The Hell Vault that is basically just going to kill us if they get to 7 mana. So most of the time, from the opponent's perspective, they're interested in trying to play a long game, right? Try to extend the length of the game, get to a place where they can actually activate this. That said, the opponent does have us down to 11 life. So if they could pressure us, it would actually be, favorable for them to do. But we're in this hilarious spot where we draw these 2 cards. Deserter's Disciple, a fine card on its own, but we also have the Sun-Colored Raptor. And Sun-Colored Raptor is a pretty bad one. It's a 2 mana 1/2 trample. You have to pump three or put 3 mana into it to pump it, which is not particularly efficient. But here's the deal: the opponent does not have nearly enough mana to activate the Hell Vault, but we actually have a ton of mana that we can put into the Sun-Colored Raptor, right? Because when we go to play, or I guess we've already played land this turn, but next turn we'll play another land. We'll have 8 lands plus the Signet for a total of 9 mana. The reason 9 mana is so significant is that is equal to 3 pumps of the Sun-Colored Raptor. And 3 pumps of the Sun-Colored Raptor puts it to 10 power, which is half of the opponent's life total. So we're going to try to go for this incredibly janky 2-shot kill. We're also going to go ahead and put the Mask of Immolation onto the Sun-Colored Raptor. We still have the Tome Blast in hand. Bit of an awkward Tome Blast, but we are just going for it here. So we're ripping it in. We're dead to basically anything, right? If the opponent has a bounce spell, we can't really beat that. If the opponent has a pump spell, well, then we're literally dead, right? Because right now we're taking 5 damage on board. If they just have, a giant growth or whatever, we just die. And this is one of the reasons the Blight Widow is so funny. If this thing didn't have Infect, if this thing had like Toxic or, almost any other ability, then the 2/4 attacking us last turn and then this turn would actually be enough to threaten lethal damage. But specifically because this thing has Infect, we're able to pump the Sun-Colored Raptor, pump it again. We're just going for it. We can't beat anything. So we are putting all 9 of our mana into the Sun-Colored Raptor. The opponent's going to go for their attack. No reason to send the Blight Widow in there. That thing isn't helping at all. And then post-combat, they have this thing, which kind of looks like it messes us up because it gains life, the Terrafractal. But it puts them to exactly 11. And you might recall that pumping the Sun-Colored Raptor, putting 9 mana into it, pumps it to 10 power, but we have 1 more point of damage from the Mortar Pod, the Mask of Immolation, and now the opponent is tapped out. So they've basically given us the go-ahead. We know here that we have lethal, and we're just going to make the play that kills them. And this game, I think this was very frustrating for the opponent. I don't recall if this was a game where they mulliganed many times, but I do know that that happened in at least one of their games against us. But another thing this is a nice demonstration of is kind of the weakness of Simic in Chaos Draft. It's not like Simic is completely terrible and you can never win with it, but Simic is easily the least interactive color pair, and the opponent was really feeling that here. Like their interaction is colorless, right? But if they just had any removal spell, any bounce spell interaction, whatever, then we're not able to just 2-shot them like this. But given that our back is against the wall, and given that, we're playing Simic, we do have a decent chance of them just straight up having nothing. We are able to go for this, and, well, it worked. All right, now game 2 of round 2. Unfortunately, we've got to mull this 1-lander. We've got this hand, which does look decent. We don't quite have the double red for the Airdwall Ripper, but we do still have our natural Tron. Lead off with a tap land here into the Mortar Pod. And the opponent has Misty Rainforest, which is cool. They have Gust Skimmer, which is just going to get killed at some point. We're going to go ahead and do that now. Got a little bit lucky there that the opponent didn't have Praise Vengeance to protect the thing, but the reason we're pinging it is so the Airdwall Ripper can get in for some damage, start snowballing, of course. And the opponent, really unfortunately for them, is able to develop a creature by Earthbending, but they only have enough mana to do that, so the creature is tapped. So all of a sudden, our 2/1 haste is now a 4/3, and the opponent's at 14 life. So Airdwall Ripper, we didn't even have double red at the start. It's really, this is kind of incredible, right? It's like everything is going right for us. And now we're just going to slam the Honden. It's mana efficient. We're going to attack for 1 with the Torch Runner. The opponent playing Dehydration on the Airdwall Ripper means that that is now fodder for the Mortar Pod. They have the Hell Vault again. They have the Pit Skulk. We're just going to Tome Blast the Pit Skulk. if we kill the forest, it just comes back for them anyway, so it's not very good to do that. But killing the pit skulk is nice because it does let us get in an extra damage. And a lot of the um, turns and like a lot of, I guess, just the game plan with this deck is sort of a puzzle of like, how are we going to deal you lethal damage, right? We are in many ways trying to play a burn deck and just try to count to 20, except unlike a burn deck where it's really straightforward and you just point lightning bolts or whatever at your opponent's face. A lot of the turns for this deck are kind of puzzles, and it's not always easy to see how we're going to cross the finish line. But once again, we do have the Barbarian Bully Deserter's Disciple combo. And here we're actually going to go ahead and play the Forest, which is not something that you would always do when you have the Barbarian Bully. It's kind of nice to just have the random excess lands in hand to discard. But I think our logic was, we already have like the Honden in play, so we're seeing a bunch of extra cards. We want to be able to cast our spells if we draw expensive ones. And here, I guess we get somewhat lucky once again. We're going to activate the Barbarian Bully and keep our spell. And I believe, I thought I played the Hunt the Weak from hand here, but I guess I must not have. And then, I think that's right. Yeah, Verdoux is just telling me that we have lethal damage. So sure enough, we do. So after we hit them for 4, we had the Mortar Pot equipped to the Torch Runner. So that's 4 points of burn. Now the opponent's at 3. Dealer's choice for how we want to do it. We can Mortar Pod equipped to the 3 creatures, sack them all, kill the opponent. We do also have Tome Blast in the graveyard. Can flash that back, equip something, and kill them that way as well. So that's our reason for not casting the Hunt the Weak. And once again, this deck continues to burn people out inexplicably. All right, so we are 2-0-4-0 here, and now on to our finals with this bizarre, goofy Teamer Mortar Pod deck. Got a mulligan the first hand, but the second one is quite nice. At this point, we've figured out the Rune Mark should just be in our main deck. It's looking quite potent, potentially, at least, with this Airdwall Ripper. So here, just going to get an island into play, slam the Sun-Colored Raptor. Opponent is going to play an Aven Trailblazer. We're just going to pass the turn here, holding up the Trap Essence, kind of praying for the opponent to just play some kind of creature. Sure enough, they do. They just play, a random flyer. Now we get to slam the Airdwall Ripper. The opponent no longer has a creature untapped to block it. Now they're going to Hookmaster, get in the air, which again looks reasonable, but unfortunately for them, we do have the punish in kind of a big way with the Rune Mark. And we draw a really nice one again in the Deserter's Disciple, which doesn't actually help either our Sun-Colored Raptor or our Airdwall Ripper anymore. They've both grown out of range. But it's just nice because this allows us to double spell. And the opponent has this Battle Screech, which, normally Battle Screech is awesome, but in this spot, we just get to alpha. The opponent has to chump. We're just pumping we kind of change our mind here, but then decide actually we do want to just go for the pump on the Sun-Colored Raptor, I think, which does threaten to kill the opponent this turn. It's Ryan, of course, who's going to float a white, threaten to do something, but thankfully he doesn't have like a condemn or whatever. So that's game 1 in a really speedy fashion. All right, now game 2 of the finals, and we have this hand, which we're going to mulligan because it had no red mana. We have this hand now, which, thanks to the power of Steam Vents, does have 2 islands for the Spire Golem. So our beautiful natural Tron continues. Castigate's going to take the Iroh, which is reasonable, and now the Airdwall Ripper comes down. This thing has been so good for us. The opponent plays a creature that can't block. Like, some of the plot armor in this draft is just kind of unreal. It's like, we have this guy, it needs to like sneak through somehow. We need some kind of like contrived scenario to occur in order for this to actually connect. And then it's like the opponent in the last one playing like a creature that enters tapped, or this opponent playing a creature that can't block. It's like, I don't really know how we're getting away with it, but we certainly are. And we're going to go ahead and shock the core Hookmaster, and now just play the Torch Runner. Opponent's already down to 13. And here's just a 3/5 vanilla, which is kind of annoying here versus our Airdwall Ripper. But we get to kill this thing by sacking the Germ and then sacking the Torch Runner, and then the opponent is now at 7, facing down a large Airdwell Ripper and a Spire Golem. They still have this dude that can't really do anything because it can't block. We get to just flash back the Tome Blast. Opponent has Dissection Practice, which is pretty clutch for them because it allows them to not only save the Blind Hunter, but prevent the Spire Golem from attacking this turn. That said, they're still down to 5, so it's not like it's that clutch for them. And then they have this discard spell, which is going to take our Sift, and then they scoop it up. So that is a 3-0-6-0 with definitely one of my weirdest Chaos Draft decks. I don't really know how we got there exactly, but we did. And I'm happy about that. And it was super fun, wild draft portion, wild games as well. Hope that I get to run it back with Verdoux sometime in the near future. And hope that you guys enjoyed watching this one. So thank you for sticking around here to the end of the video, and we will see you in the next draft.